Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest rendition of Tales from Outer Space. Taken from the subreddit HFY. All the relevant links will be down below. And as always, I hope that you enjoy, and if you do, please consider supporting the channel. Now, on to the science fiction. Directive, written by Visser946. The first ones made the desperates. Thousands upon thousands of races were spliced and crafted. Empty husks filled the souls pooled from the aether. Each and every race was meticulously crafted, engineered to perfection for the directive of the first ones wished for them. The Ardal were made with keen nerves upon their feet to taste the ground that they walked on, and better choose soil with which to plant their harvests with powerful hands. The Wyquan were small and light, yet wiry and strong, and had on their bodies many limbs with which to build grand structures, swinging and climbing within the skeletal scaffolding. The Pakrit had on their heads powerful eyes, and on their bodies glowing eyes, with which they navigated the great mines with ease, in search of the precious metals and minerals the first ones craved so. All was well. Millennia passed in perfect organized peace. Then came the blight. Perhaps it was a malicious disease made by the Ketwep bioengineers in spite of their masters. Others argue that the gods were displeased with the rule of the first ones and cast the blight upon them in rage. Some say that the first ones only came to the galaxy to create life and left their mortal bodies when they saw their creation completed. The how and why of the blight were irrelevant. The first ones perished, leaving behind the desperates. Their passing was mourned on 1,000,000 worlds by many thousands of peoples. But when the mourning was over, they did what they had been designed to do. The Azar continued to collect water and purify it. The Fupwuk continued to build starships, and the Quatil continued to pilot those ships, distributing everything and everyone as needed to the millions of worlds the desperates inhabited. Each race went about their original directive. The Gohal were made for war. Can their blame really be placed upon them for what ensued? The desperates were given their directives with no end in mind, save for the one envisioned by the first ones themselves. For the vast majority of the myriad of desperates, those directives entailed creation and discovery. The Gohal had been formulated for strength and endurance. They had 3 limbs on their upper body to hold and manipulate terrible weapons. 2 more limbs held them up and carried them far. A hard shell of chitin served to armor them, the pieces meeting at the joints to allow graceful and fluid movement. 3 bulbous, multifaceted eyes faced 3 directions on their head, to allow them a 360-degree view, and a large brain to allow them to process the fights rapidly and respond appropriately and effectively. They quickly took to the stars to follow their directive. 8 trillion lives were snuffed out as the Gohal took through force that which had been given freely and enslaved those who had served eagerly. The Gohal butchered the very races they had been created to protect, and the stars were painted blue with the blood of the innocent. They were unstoppable. Their spread was relentless. Their single-minded cruelty unforgiving, and their capacity for war and bloodshed was infinite. Then they found the humans. At first the Gohal were perplexed. The humans didn't seem to follow a directive, or at least not a single directive. They built, engineered, crafted fine jewelry, wrote songs, grew food, waged war. They were not unlike the Gohal either. 4 limbs, 2 near the top and 2 to the bottom. Their skeleton was on the inside rather than the outside, leaving exposed, soft and squishy flesh. 2 forward-facing eyes and a relatively large brain, though for what the brains had been programmed, the Gohal knew not. Some wondered whether they were an incarnation, an amalgamation of sorts to represent all the desperates. Others postulated that the humans were the reincarnation of the first ones themselves. In the end, it did not matter to them. The Gahal did as they had done thousands of times previously. They waged war. Then the Gahal did something they had not done before. They lost momentum and their spread was halted. Races had tried to fight back in the past and had been crushed beneath the might of the Gahal, but the humans remained unswayed. They fought back fiercely, killing thousands of Gahal even as their own people were slaughtered by the millions. The Gahal losses swelled to millions and then billions as the humans began dying by the 100,000s, then by the tens of thousands, then by the thousands, and for the first time the Gahal felt something akin to fear. Their perplexion with the humans was transformed into pure animosity as it became increasingly clear that the first ones had made another race to wage war. And their war with the humans became increasingly violent as more and more Gahal fleets were called from other desperate worlds to assist in the elimination of the competition. Finally, as a desperate gambit, the Gahal called the Yerhoba slaves to decipher the many tongues of the warborn and teach it to a select few of the elite soldiers. Unfamiliar with the roles of researchers, the Gahal elite forces were sent to the humans' greatest concentrated stores of information in the frantic search for a weakness. A psychological or physiological one the first ones gave them, or an exploitable one as a result of their secret directive. The war had gone on for too long, and it was time to end things. An approaching blue and white vehicle with flashing red sirens burst into flame and debris as a well-aimed shot from Seven's pulse cannon rendered it into an immobile piece of burning scrap metal. One human inside struggled to escape from the vehicle, but was firmly secured in place by a black strap. 3 quickly approached as the alien began screaming. "What is your directive?" 3 asked. The human struggled to loosen the primitive weapon from its holster on its hip, even as the flames licked at its legs and crawled up its artificial covering. 2 shots rang out, and 2 deep thunk sounds swallowed as the pieces of lead were deflected harmlessly off of 3's chitin. 3 plunged his fist into the chest of the human. Red blood gushed from the wound around his hand as he pulled out the beating heart of the uncooperative individual. The scream ceased, but the human thrashed on momentarily. 7 turned away to follow 6 into the building as 3 left the alien to its fiery fate. There had been 10 when they had landed. The council had deemed the risk of destroying the information stores too great to send them close to it, so their ship had been directed quite a ways off. They had cut down the masses of humans surrounding their ship before realizing that they were not combat humans. They had encountered the outer colonies on the front. Several of their own were killed as they struggled through the labyrinth of buildings to find their information building, something that the humans called a library. It became apparent that the humans were not expecting an outright assault on their homeworld, as the combat humans they encountered were armed with only simple firearms, rather than the chitin-shattering weaponry that bared on the front lines. Still, the Gahal elite had their losses. 1, 9, and 10 died when the humans shot them in the eyes. The lightning-quick shrapnel tore past the soft eyes of the 3 elites and into their brains, killing them instantly. 2 and 4 perished when the humans were able to shoot them in chinks of their armor. Their deaths had been far slower and infinitely more agonizing. 5 and 8's chitin were shattered and broken when a rather large and cumbersome-looking vehicle crashed into them. 7 had barely leapt out of the way as the machine roared past, leaving the mangled remains of his fellow elite twitching and dying blue puddles of their own blood. 7 alone had slaughtered 14 humans and did not know how many others had killed before the streets grew empty. It gave him little comfort as he plunged himself into the poorly lit abyss of the library. Before 7 had been sent to Earth, he had been 56, one Gahal amongst many on the moon of Qui 234. A Wyquan colony had decided to rebel. Their limbs and strength allowed them easy and graceful movements through the trees, swinging through them as though they were scaffolding on some grand structure. They had stolen the pulse weapons of their guard and had captured them, By the time 7, then 56 had arrived, the Wyquin colonists had already erected a fortress. The Gahal quickly tore open the doors of the building and slaughtered everyone inside. The Wyquin colonists fought bravely, but in the end, they weren't built to fight. Not like the Gahal. Within the span of one rotation around Qui 234, the Gahal turned the fortress into a tomb. A loud ringing from without the structure heralded the arrival of more combat humans as 7, 6, and 3 delved deeper into the building. An elderly human shivered and shook behind a large wooden desk. 3 asked of its director before slaying the pathetic human. 7 moved deeper within the library and made a sound of exasperation as he saw the true extent of their task. The Yorub slaves had learned from the human captives of their many information stores. There was something they called the Internet that most humans relied on for information. However, the Gahal Council deemed it a futile search. The captives made it very clear that the Internet mostly consisted of pornography, entertainment, human music, and fabricated information. The second greatest stores of information were the libraries, physical copies of information arranged for easy search. However, they had not specified the great extent of the information within. The very walls were lined with books, and the literal walls of books created a labyrinth of sorts within the confines of the library. 7 was facing several lifetimes of searching. "This is futile. There are too many." 6 spoke 7's thoughts in the native tongue, the language of the first ones. "You will go back to the ship and request a larger team to acquisition these books." "I agree," 7 clicked back in their native tongue. "The council can bring in more your hub to research through them." "It is agreed." 3 bowed his head in a notion of acceptance. The 3 remaining Gahal walked through the maze of corridors towards the exit. It wasn't until they were back at the main passageway of the library that 7 saw the human waiting outside. "Breeze! Put your hands over your heads!" a loud human voice demanded over the sounds of sirens. There were only 7 humans outside the building, though each was armed with a greater extent than the other combat humans they had encountered earlier. 7 recognized 2 humans armed with chitin-shattering weapons amongst them, though the rest were woefully under-equipped to deal with the 3 elite Gahal. "What is your directive?" 7 asked in reply as the 3 Gahal slowly approached the combat humans, his voice all but drowned out by the loud sirens. "Open fire!" the human yelled. The 2 humans with chitin shatterers were clearly unfamiliar with the weapons that they were holding. The weapons jerked and twitched in their hands, missing entirely as 3 and 6 rushed forward and tore their wielders apart. 7 took aim with his pulse cannon. The weapon charged for a moment before unleashing a devastating wave of energy. One of the vehicles exploded into black shrapnel and flames. The force of the explosion sent a solitary human flying away, its broken body landing mutilated and inert. "Bastard!" A single human ran up to 7, its projectiles bouncing nearly harmlessly off 7's chitin. 7 ducked and weaved to avoid the nuisance of the bullets as he rushed to meet the determined foe. He plunged his fingers into the flesh of the human's firing arm and lifted it into the air. It dropped the weapon and writhed in agony, trying to free itself. "What is your directive?" 7 asked. He was getting very tired of asking. "The first ones gave your people a directive. What is it?" "Frick you!" the human spat in one of 7's eyes. He killed the human and threw aside its corpse before wiping away the saliva. "What is your directive?" 3 asked a human pinned beneath one of his feet. The human struggled for a moment without answering before another one burst out from behind one of the vehicles. Its weapon made a sound like an explosion, and all 3's eyes burst like balloons filled with blue blood. 7 ran forward and killed the vexatious human, but 6 was closer. He plunged his 4-fingered hand into the back of the human and rendered it inert. As its body collapsed, the other combat humans that had been previously pinned beneath 3 had a clear shot. without a word, had fired several rounds at 6, 3 rounds bouncing harmlessly off his chitin before the 4th round found its mark. The hypersonic lead tore through one of 6's front eyes and out the back eye. 7 moved forward and crushed the responsible human underfoot before 6's body hit the ground. "Just die already!" 7 nearly collapsed under the barrage of rapid fire before pouncing behind one of the vehicles and using it as cover. "What is your directive?" 7 asked from behind the machine. "Directive? What the hell's that?" The human was close. 7 couldn't see it, but he could hear it on the other side of the vehicle. "The first ones gave all intelligent races a directive. What's your directive?" 7 saw a shadow move from beneath the vehicle. Acting quickly, he strained to flip over the human machine. The car tipped to one side, and the human rolled between it and the ground, in the space provided by the wheels. "First ones? Who the hell is the first ones?" The human pointed its weapon up at 7's face from its low position. 7 quickly ducked out the way, rather than risk his life in ending the human. What he had learned was too valuable to lose now. From a short distance, he took aim with his pulse cannon, but in a few moments it took to charge, the human had already fired a barrage of projectiles into the sleek pulse weapon, rendering it useless. 7 dropped the weapon. The human took aim with its primitive weapon. Click, click, click. "Crap!" The human sounded sick, realizing its precarious situation. It turned around and grabbed one of the weapons of a fallen ally. 7 acted faster and flung the human aside, far out of reach of any of its weapons. "The first ones made everyone. Surely your people were given a directive at the cusp of your creation. You cannot reasonably deny this." 7 was getting annoyed. The human struggled back onto its feet. "That's not true at all." The human winced and touched itself on the rib cage. It drew away its hand, red with blood. "You sound worse than my Sunday school teacher. We didn't come from anywhere. Primordial ooze tossed into a mold of evolution. That's where we are." 7 struck the human across the face for its insolence. It fell and rolled several feet away. "That's a lie. The first ones made you and gave you a directive. Tell me what your directive is." "Frick, God damn it, that hurts." The human rolled around in agony before struggling to its feet once more. "Didn't you hear? The first ones didn't make us." 7 made a move to strike it down once again, but the human stepped backwards and avoided the hit. "I don't know who the hell your first ones are, but I'm pretty sure they've never been here before." "Then your species has no directive. That simplifies things." 7 moved forward to strike the human again, and this time he didn't miss. The human went tumbling, landing near the burnt wreck of a vehicle 7 had shot previously. The flames had nearly died out, but the wreck was still smoking. "Wait! No! Please! Wait!" The human meekly held up one hand in protest of its death as 7 approached. We do have a directive." Its voice was weak. "How do you have a directive if one was not given to you?" 7 waved his hands in frustration. Just when he thought things were becoming simpler, they became complicated once again. Perhaps the humans were created by another race, not unlike the first ones. Perhaps they were a race's version of the Gohal, a race of warmongers. We have a directive." The human coughed, its voice barely a whisper. 7 moved closer, afraid that the injuries that he had inflicted would prevent the discovery of the human directive. Mother Nature gave us a directive." The voice of the human was barely audible. It beckoned weakly for 7 to come closer. Perhaps this Mother Nature was their version of Gohal's first ones. 7 leant in closer to the human to hear its dying words. Suddenly, and without warning, the human grabbed onto 7's neck and pulled their heads together in a vicious headbutt. 7 felt his 2 front eyes burst with the force of the impact and was left seeing only from his back eye. 7 reached forward to kill the treacherous human, but it was no longer where he was expecting it to be. The human suddenly appeared from 7's posterior point of view, a blackened shard of steel in hand, a soft human arm wrapped around Seven's neck as he struggled to grab the dissembling creature. "What is your directive, deceiver?" Seven asked once more, voice seething with hate. The human leant in, close enough for Seven to smell the rank stench of its breath and the sour smell of its sweat and blood. "Survive!" the human grimaced as it plunged the black shard into Seven's back eye and into his brain. End of story. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed, and if you do, please consider supporting the author, even by popping over and leaving a thumbs up or a nice comment, just to show your appreciation for the story. However, if you wish to support this channel, there are links down below which will help immensely. I will see you all in the next one, and until then, I hope that you have a fantastic day. Cheers.